I didn't move to New York City for peace. I knew better than that. I moved here because it was loud enough to drown out the echoes of my past. People around here just knew me as Mr. Walker, an old guy with a stiff walk and sharp eyes. They didn't know that 20 years ago I was walking through Kandahar with blood on my boots and a radio in my ear. Special forces, classified missions, ghost ops. Now, my battles were with creaking knees, late night sirens, and the neighborhood kids turning the block into a war zone of their own. East Harlem had changed, or maybe it never really did, but I had, and I was tired of watching everything rot while the good people kept their doors bolted. I had rules. I stayed quiet. I kept my head down. I didn't get involved until that night. It was a Thursday. A kid named Ramon, barely 17, got jumped outside the corner bodega. 5 of them, faces covered, stomping on him like he wasn't even human. His mother's screams pierced the street like a blade. And I just stood at my window, watching. That was the moment I broke my own rule. I stepped out in my old boots, the same kind I wore in Iraq. Walked right through the line of them. One grabbed me by the collar and laughed. "You lost, Grandpa?" I smiled. Just a little. "Yeah," I said. "Lost in how soft you kids turned out." Then I dropped him. It took less than 10 seconds. 4 down, 1 ran. Ramon was staring at me like I was a ghost. I helped him up, told him to get home, told his mother to lock the door and keep the lights off. That night, the street fell silent. But it wouldn't stay that way for long. By sunrise, word had spread. They called me the old man who moved like a shadow. Some said I was ex-CIA. Others swore I was a hitman on retirement. I didn't care what they thought. I wasn't looking for attention, but something inside me had switched on again. That neighborhood needed something the cops wouldn't provide. Discipline. See, NYPD barely rolled through anymore. The gangs had the streets mapped like military terrain. Corners were checkpoints. Parks were outposts. And the kids? They were foot soldiers in a war they didn't understand. I started walking the block every morning, same time, same path, silent, observing. The dealers stopped smirking. The loiterers stopped spitting on the sidewalks. One time I found a group of them pushing fentanyl near the school gates. I walked up to them and placed a folded flag on the bench. No words, just the flag. They didn't come back. Later that week, I got a knock on my door. NYPD. A young officer, barely old enough to remember September 11th. He looked at me like I was some relic. "We heard you've been intervening." "I heard you haven't," I replied. He didn't like that, but he couldn't argue. "You can't do this forever," he warned. I looked past him down the hallway and muttered, "I did it longer than you've been alive." He left. I wasn't trying to be a hero. I'd buried enough of those. But I couldn't stand by while kids got dragged into a war no one was fighting to win. I knew it was coming. 2 weeks of silence only meant they were planning something big. They struck just before midnight. 6 cars, 20 men, hoods up, masks on, guns drawn. They didn't just want to scare me, they wanted to make me disappear. But I was ready. Old habits don't die. They wait. I had eyes on the rooftops. Cameras I installed myself. No Wi-Fi. Hardwired, hidden. When they kicked down my door, they didn't find a frightened man in pajamas. They found me sitting on the floor, hands wrapped, boots laced. I moved like I was 30 years younger. Close combat. Every strike precise. Not flashy. Not Hollywood. Just efficient. I disabled 5 before the 6th fired. He missed, I didn't. The rest ran. Police came. Not because someone called them. Because someone screamed. I was standing in the street, bloodied but alive, surrounded by broken men. The same young officer showed up. What the hell happened here? They knocked, I said, so I answered. This time, he didn't say anything. That was the night the city started whispering again. Not about gang leaders or turf wars, about the old man who cleaned up his street with nothing but muscle memory and a moral code. Weeks passed, then months, and the block changed. Kids started walking to school without fear. Shopkeepers nodded with pride. The graffiti stopped multiplying, the noise faded. People started calling me sir, not in fear, in respect. But I didn't need gratitude. I needed closure. So I wrote one final letter, mailed it to an old P.O. box in Fort Bragg. To those who served beside me, you trained me to fight chaos. You taught me that silence is a weapon. Now I've used both to protect a piece of America we swore to defend. I'm done now. The street is quiet. Mission complete. Sergeant Walker. I folded my uniform one last time, placed it in a sealed crate, stored it in the attic beneath a fading flag. Then I went back outside, coffee in hand, and sat on my stoop. The sun was rising, kids were laughing. No one knew what it cost to bring that peace. But that was fine. Wolves don't bark, they watch, they wait. And when the time comes, they remind the world that they were never just old men. They were always ready.